You know that feeling when you've just kicked off this massive computationally heavy task on your computer?
Oh, like a huge video render or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. A massive video render or maybe a really complex data compilation script. And you realize, looking at the clock, that you have to leave for the airport in exactly 5 minutes.
Right. The worst timing.
It is. You are just staring at that progress bar, like willing it to move faster. Because you know the second you close that laptop or walk away from your desk, the magic just
It
stops.
causes everything.
Right. It's this incredibly archaic physical tether. I mean, we have access to the most brilliant, world-class artificial intelligence right now, but it is effectively chained to our office furniture.
Tied to the desk.
Exactly. You walk out the door to grab lunch, and your AI assistant is suddenly just completely useless to you.
It really is the paradox of modern productivity, if you think about it,
Mm.
because we carry these, phenomenally powerful supercomputers in our pockets, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yet the actual heavy lifting, those complex multi-step workflows, they still demand our physical presence at a localized desktop environment. The power is entirely dependent on your geography and hardware proximity.
Which is exactly the friction point we are tearing apart today. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. If you're listening to this, you're probably like us, trying to figure out how to gain this knowledge quickly without drowning in tech jargon.
We want to actually apply this stuff.
Right. So we're looking at a fascinating breakdown from Brock Masorich today. He's been testing this new feature from Anthropic. It's called Claude Dispatch.
Dispatch, yeah.
And the way he maps out these workflows, it fundamentally challenges this entire paradigm of being chained to your desk. We were talking about moving away from the idea of, AI as a software tool that you operate,
Right.
and shifting into this new mindset of AI as an asynchronous agent that you deploy.
I think that distinction between operating and deploying is really everything here. Because when you operate a tool, it inherently requires your real-time synchronous input.
You have to be there.
Exactly. You click, it reacts, you type, it generates. It's a one-to-one exchange.
Hmm.
But deploying an asynchronous agent, that means you give an instruction, you walk away, and the system it manages its own execution timeline.
You just does the work.
Right. It deals with variables, it generates a finalized output, all without you sitting there babysitting the screen.
Babysitting the screen. I love that phrasing so much.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly what I do. I just sit there and watch the cursor blink, waiting for it to finish so I can do the next thing.
We all do it.
So looking at how Mesrick actually set this up, Cowork Dispatch basically functions as a bridge.
A secure bridge. Yeah.
Right. You have the Claude mobile app on your iPhone or Android.
Yeah.
And Dispatch adds this specific button that acts as a direct text line to the Claude desktop app running back on your Mac or Windows machine.
Which could be at home or in the office.
Exactly. So you can literally text your computer to do work while you're standing in line for coffee.
And you know what's crazy about this? The barrier to entry for this kind of remote execution has just plummeted recently.
Oh, the pricing change. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Because Anthropic initially gated this feature behind their Max plan, which that sits at $100 a month.
That's a steep subscription for most people.
Very steep. And that price point clearly signaled it was meant for enterprise environments, right? Or absolute top-tier power users. But they've recently pushed it down to the Pro plan.
Which is the standard $17 a month tier.
Exactly.
That stood out to me immediately in the source material. Because going from $100 to $17, that isn't just a discount. It fundamentally changes who gets to play with the toy.
It totally does.
You go from corporate IT departments to, everyday freelancers, college students, small business owners. Everyone has access now.
It's the classic tech democratization pipeline.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you use the high-paying enterprise tier as your beta testing ground. You stress test the server stability with a smaller group. You map out the edge cases of how these AI agents fail, and you squash the critical bugs.
Jill, the rich guys pay to find the bugs for us.
Basically, yeah. And then once the infrastructure can actually handle the massive load, you flip the switch for the mass market at $17.
Make it accessible.
Right. But to actually enable a mobile phone to remotely pilot a desktop operating system and do it securely, Anthropic had to make a very specific architectural choice.
Yeah, the setup process. And I'll be honest, this is where I started to get a little skeptical reading through Brock's breakdown.
The local folders.
Yes, because you download the desktop app, you navigate to the Cowork tab, and then you have to manually create and select a specific local folder on your hard drive.
He names his Cowork Dispatch.
Right. And then you explicitly grant Claude permission to read edit, and add files strictly to that folder, or maybe a few other selected folders.
You're defining its physical operational space on the machine.
But hold on a second. Brock's whole focus here is building AI workflows for people who aren't deeply technical. And we live in an era of seamless, ubiquitous cloud syncing. Everything is supposed to just work everywhere. Dropbox, iCloud, Google Drive,
Yeah.
setting up local file permissions and pointing software to specific directories on a hard drive.
It feels a bit old school.
It feels incredibly 2005. It's like, okay, it's like finally hiring this genius-level intern to sit at your desk while you run errands. But before you leave the office, you draw a literal chalk circle around their chair and tell them, do not touch a single piece of paper outside this circle.
That's a great analogy.
Right. But isn't that defeating the whole purpose of having a smart, autonomous agent?
I get why it feels like a step backward, I really do. But you have to think about the alternative here. What happens if you don't draw that chalk circle?
It can just access everything.
Yes. You are handing an autonomous probabilistic intelligence the keys to your entire local file system while you are not even in the room.
Oh, wow.
Right. If this were a seamless, unrestricted cloud integration that could just invisibly spider through your entire hard drive to find whatever it thinks it needs, the security implications of that would be catastrophic.
Okay, when you put it like that, what's the worst case scenario here?
Okay, imagine the AI misinterprets a vague prompt you send from your phone. It hallucinates a directory path, and it starts reading your tax returns from 6 years ago to compile a summary that you didn't even ask for.
Oh, man.
Or, even worse, it executes a script that accidentally overrides a folder containing irreplaceable family photos, or highly sensitive client data.
A hallucination that deletes my hard drive.
Exactly. Because a large language model is not a deterministic calculator. It makes logical leaps. And sometimes those leaps are entirely wrong.
Yeah, that is a terrifying thought. So the local folder architecture isn't archaic, it's a structural sandbox.
It's a very necessary sandbox.
Yeah.
By restricting the AI strictly to that designated Claude Dispatch folder, you are actively managing context and mitigating risk.
It literally can't reach the rest of the computer.
It physically cannot access the root drive. It can't see your system files. It grounds the agent in a highly controlled environment.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's a security guardrail. It allows you to confidently deploy this powerful tool from a coffee shop, knowing its blast radius is completely contained to that single folder.
The chalk circle isn't to hold the intern back. It's to protect the rest of the company from the intern.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes complete sense to me now. So, we've established this secure bridge. The phone talks to the computer executes within the sandbox. But if we just stop there, all we really have is a glorified remote control.
Right, which isn't revolutionary on its own.
No. If I text my computer, summarize this document, and then I have to wait for it to finish before I can ask it to do anything else, it's just basic automation.
It would be entirely synchronous,
Yeah.
just displaced geographically.
Right. But Brock highlights a feature that completely shatters that bottleneck. And he calls it parallel agents.
This is a big one.
This is where the whole asynchronous concept really clicked for me.
Mhm.
Because you aren't just sending one command from the gym. You can send 3, 5, or 10 distinct, highly complex tasks simultaneously.
You are effectively cloning your execution capability.
Yes. Brock lays out this scenario where you text your desktop to initiate 3 different agents at once.
All running at the exact same time.
Exactly. Agent 1 is deployed to sweep through your email inbox and draft replies. Concurrently, Agent 2 is executing a deep dive research task on a specific topic. I think he was looking into OpenClaw in his example, and it's pulling web data.
Right.
And at the exact same time, Agent 3 is scanning your calendar and past transcripts to prep a brief for your upcoming meetings, all running in parallel on your local machine.
Which is just a massive leap in how we process information as a society.
Yeah.
Because humans are notoriously terrible at true multitasking.
Oh yeah, we just task quit rapidly.
Exactly. We task switch, which drains our cognitive load. We get tired. But a localized AI agent setup doesn't have that biological limitation. It just spins up a separate instance of the model for each command and executes them all concurrently.
It's incredible, and this is big, but there is a massive catch here that we have to talk about.
The sequential problem.
Yes. Brock explicitly shows where this seemingly invincible parallel processing completely faceplants. Claude Dispatch is brilliant at parallel tasks, but it is deeply flawed when it comes to sequential tasks.
It's the dependencies bottleneck.
Right. And he uses a very simple example to demonstrate this failure point. He sends a single text that just says, research topic X, and then email the team about what you found.
Which sounds so basic.
To a human assistant, that is the most basic instruction in the world.
Yeah.
Research, then email. But Dispatch fails. It totally trips over that if this, then that logic.
It fails because the output of the second action, the email, is entirely dependent on the successful completion, synthesis, and staging of the first action, the research.
I found this absolutely fascinating from a technical psychology standpoint.
How so?
Well, we are dealing with bleeding-edge artificial intelligence, right? This massive, complex neural network. And yet, it struggles with the exact same workflow bottlenecks that a junior, entry-level human does waiting on dependencies.
That's a really good point.
Why can this system flawlessly manage 10 completely disconnected, highly complex tasks at the same time, but it completely breaks down when asked to pause and wait for step A to finish before starting step B?
It fundamentally comes down to how AI agent memory and task orchestration are currently architected in the backend.
Okay, break that down for me.
So you have to separate independent parallel processing from chain sequential reasoning.
Clearly.
They require completely different infrastructure. Think of independent parallel processing like hiring 3 different short-order cooks in a diner.
Okay, 3 cooks.
Cook A is told to make pancakes. Cook B is frying eggs. Cook C is brewing coffee.
They never need to speak to each other.
Exactly. They receive their discrete prompt, they have their ingredients, and they execute. Dispatch is incredibly efficient at acting like the diner manager. It takes your text message, splits it into 3 separate orders, and hands them to 3 separate instances of the LLM.
So they're completely siloed.
Completely siloed. But a sequential command like research this, then email the results is like telling one cook to make an omelet, but they aren't allowed to start until another cook finishes laying the egg.
Wait, the cook is laying the egg.
Oh, you know what I mean. The chicken lays the egg.
Right, right.
The point is, it requires a persistent memory state and a staging area.
A staging area. What does that mean for AI?
For an AI to execute sequential reasoning autonomously, it needs an overarching orchestration layer. It has to open a workspace, perform the research action, take the specific output of that research, store it in a temporary short-term memory vault.
So it has to hold on to it.
Right. Then it has to evaluate whether the research phase is definitively complete, and then inject that stored data into a brand new prompt to trigger the EMIS draft.
Oh, I see.
The beta version of Dispatch simply lacks that internal staging architecture right now. It receives the prompt and wants to execute everything immediately.
So it rushes it.
It tries to draft the email at the exact same millisecond it starts the research. It realizes it has no data to put in the email, and it just errors out.
It doesn't know how to hold a thought. It literally can't pause.
Exactly. It operates in discrete, stateless events. It hasn't mastered the handoff between dependent tasks yet.
If you are listening to this right now, I want you to mentally audit your own workday. Seriously, think about it. How much of your daily friction is made up of independent parallel tasks?
The isolated chores.
Right. The chores you could theoretically hand off to 10 different interns simultaneously. Now contrast that with your sequential bottlenecks, where you are literally paralyzed, unable to move to step B until step A is fully resolved.
It's a very different type of work.
Because right now, understanding that distinction is the absolute key to unlocking Dispatch. It can only automate the parallel. If you try to force it to do sequential chaining, you will just get frustrated.
You really have to design your mobile prompts to exploit its parallel strengths and avoid those sequential traps.
Which perfectly transitions into what the tool can do flawlessly right now. Because Brock's breakdown is incredibly valuable. He doesn't just talk theory. He gives 5 highly specific, real-world use cases where he is actively automating friction out of his daily life.
And before we dive into those specific cases, we really have to look at the mechanism making them possible. Brock is using custom skills or plugins.
Right. In the source material, he actually provides a zip file for his viewers to download. And he makes a very specific point to say, do not unzip this file.
Just upload it as is.
Yeah, you just take the zip folder and upload it directly into the personal plugins menu within the Cowork desktop app.
That zip file is essentially a care package of automation. It contains bundles of predefined skills, tool access permissions, and most importantly, markdown files.
Okay, so we've got an audience of people who are tech literate, but maybe they haven't built their own AI plugins from scratch before. Why are these markdown files the secret sauce here?
Think of a large language model as a highly capable but easily distracted probabilistic engine.
Like a really smart golden retriever.
Sort of, yeah. If you just give it a vague command, it might solve it 5 different ways on 5 different days. A markdown file acts as a deterministic recipe.
So it forces consistency.
Exactly. It's a text document containing a highly structured, rigid set of instructions and formatting rules. So when Brock texts a specific trigger phrase from his phone, the AI doesn't just guess what to do.
It looks at the recipe.
It looks into that uploaded zip file, finds the corresponding markdown file, and reads it. It says, when the human says slideshow, I must follow these exact 12 steps, format the output in this specific HTML structure, and save it to this exact directory.
It's essentially pre-packaging a massive complex prompt. So you don't have to type a 3-paragraph explanation on your iPhone keyboard while you're standing in line at the grocery store.
Nobody wants to do that.
No, you just type a 2-word trigger, and the markdown file does all the heavy lifting in the background.
Precisely. It turns a conversational AI into an executable program.
Let's look at how that actually plays out in his first use case, which is slideshow generation. Brock explains how he used to handle this. He'd sit down at his desktop, open Claude, trigger a specific slide skill, and then sit there and wait while the AI generated a full HTML presentation.
Babysitting the screen again.
Right. But now, with Dispatch, he triggers that exact same workflow from his car.
Though he wisely adds the caveat that you should never text and drive.
Yes, very important caveat. Pull over first. But the operational shift here is profound. He can be sitting in the passenger seat or on a train commuting home and text slideshow dispatch. And the AI starts spinning up the HTML locally on his home desktop.
While he's miles away.
By the time he walks through his front door, the presentation is fully coded, formatted, and sitting in his sandbox folder waiting for him to review it.
You're reclaiming dead time. Commutes in transit basically become active execution windows.
It's amazing. The second use case really highlights the analytical power of the agent, and he calls it the inbox sweep.
This one is huge for anybody overwhelmed by email.
He texts the trigger, and the AI connects to his Gmail. But, and this is the important part, it doesn't just do a dumb keyword search. Brock notes that it specifically scanned for unread and urgent emails, and it identified 15 that required attention.
The ability to accurately categorize an email as urgent implies a highly sophisticated level of semantic understanding.
Right, it's not just looking for the red exclamation point icon.
No, it's actually reading the context of the message and understanding the tone.
And it goes a step further than that. It didn't just give him a list of the 15 people who emailed him, it actively went into his Gmail drafts folder and pre-drafted highly contextual replies to all 15 of them. And finally, it generated this beautiful coded HTML dashboard right there on his desktop, summarizing the entire triage process.
That right there is the difference between simple flagging and active preparation.
Yeah.
A traditional email filter flags a message. An asynchronous agent does the actual cognitive labor of drafting the response, leaving you with only the executive decision of clicking approve or edit.
You just become the editor. Use case 3 is meeting prep, and this one honestly blew my mind regarding local context.
Because of the transcripts?
Yes. Brock texts meeting prep, and the AI doesn't just look at his Google Calendar. It actively scours past meeting transcripts and email histories that are stored locally on his machine.
The specificity in his breakdown here is really what makes it so compelling to me.
Exactly. The AI identifies an upcoming meeting called the AI Mafia meeting, scheduled for 7 a.m. Mountain Time. But it doesn't just tell him, hey, you have a meeting.
A dumb assistant would just do that.
Right. Instead, it pulls historical context about a completely separate event they had thrown in Cape Town a month prior. It connects the dots between the attendees of both events and gives Brock a hyper-specific action item.
It connects the dots itself.
Yes, it reminds him, hey, you need to give this group a 6-month update on your Loom usage, your agency's progress, your YouTube channel growth, and your school.
This perfectly validates that local folder sandbox we discussed earlier.
How so?
Because if you were using a standard web-based ChatGPT or Claude interface, it would have no idea what the AI Mafia is or what happened in Cape Town, because that data doesn't exist on the public internet.
Oh, right, it's private local data.
Exactly. By giving the agent access to localized transcripts and internal documents within that secure chalk circle, it can synthesize a deeply personalized, highly contextual brief. It has institutional memory.
It's like having a chief of staff who remembers every conversation you had 3 months ago.
Which is invaluable.
Moving on, use case 4 tackles the absolute worst part of running a business, the expense report.
Oh, brutal.
Brock frames this as a task that used to eat up 45 minutes of manual, soul-crushing data entry. He had this local folder full of PDF receipts. He would have to open every single PDF, find the total amount, copy it, open a spreadsheet, paste it, and manually assign a tax category.
It's the absolute definition of high-friction, low-value work.
Completely. But now, he just dumps the PDFs into his dispatch folder. He texts his computer from his phone, scan my receipts, and give me an expense report.
And it uses vision for this, right?
Yes. The AI uses its multimodal vision capabilities to actually read the visual structure of the PDFs. It extracts the data, categorizes the spending logic, and outputs a fully interactive web page report.
Taking a 45-minute manual data entry loop and reducing it to a single text message and a 5-second API call, that is immense leverage for a small business owner.
Absolutely game-changing. The final use case, number 5, is Slack catch-up and quick research. And we all know the nightmare of opening Slack after being away for 3 hours.
Just 50 unread notifications across 10 different channels.
Yes, just a wall of text. But Brock's agent scans the clutter, it actively ignores the noise, flags the critical updates, and generates a clean summary in a markdown file.
And doing it locally is key here.
Right. He makes a very specific point to note that because this is happening locally, it protects sensitive cross-company information that he wouldn't want floating around some public cloud server.
Again, leaning heavily on the security architecture of localized execution.
Okay, so objectively, these 5 use cases, the slideshows, the inbox sweeps, the hyper-specific meeting preps, the PDF parsing, the Slack summaries, they are brilliant. They really are. But looking closely at Brock's demonstration in the source, I notice a massive contradiction in the user experience.
Really? A contradiction?
Yeah, it actually feels incredibly disjointed.
Disjointed how?
Think about the outputs. Dispatch is generating these beautiful, highly detailed, interactive HTML dashboards for the emails. It's building fully formatted web pages for the expense reports.
Yeah.
Gorgeous markdown files for the meeting briefs. But you cannot actually view any of those rich assets on your phone.
Ah, the delivery mechanism.
Yes. Brock explicitly shows that when you text the command from your phone, the AI replies in the mobile chat with a heavily watered-down basic text brief. It just says, I found 15 emails, I made the slides.
That's it.
That's it. If you want to see the interactive dashboard or actually review the HTML presentation, you have to physically commute back to your desk, sit down, open the local folder, and double-click the file.
I see what you mean.
It's like imagine going to a Michelin star restaurant, ordering this incredible, complex, multi-course meal. But instead of serving it to you at the table, the waiter just texts you a description of how delicious it smells and says the actual food is waiting in Tupperware in your fridge at home.
It's hilarious.
Why build desktop-level visual assets from a mobile prompt if the mobile user can't even consume them?
Right.
It feels like a massive UI/UX failure to me.
It's a really great analogy, but I wouldn't call it a failure necessarily. I'd call it a very deliberate, albeit temporary, architectural boundary. You have to separate the concept of the trigger from the workspace.
The trigger versus the workspace. Unpack that for me.
Anthropic understands the fundamental limitations of mobile hardware and, frankly, human attention. Reviewing a dense, multi-tabbed HTML expense report or trying to edit a complex slide deck on a 6-inch pane of glass while walking down the street, that is a miserable user experience.
That's true. It is annoying to do that on a phone.
The phone is not designed for deep, immersive review of complex documents. The phone is the remote control. It is just the trigger.
So I'm just using the phone to kick off the heavy lifting.
Exactly. You utilize the phone during your idle time, waiting in line, sitting in an Uber to initiate the computationally heavy, time-consuming tasks. The AI spends 20 minutes reading PDFs, cross-referencing calendars, and formatting code.
It does the prep work.
It handles the prep work while you are in transit. When you finally sit down at your workspace, the meal is already prepared, plated, and waiting for you on a screen large enough to actually interact with it meaningfully.
Okay, I see. I'm just firing the starting gun from my pocket.
Yes. Furthermore, this UI/UX disconnect is the clearest indicator that Claude Dispatch is very much still a beta product in preview mode.
They're still building it out.
Right. Anthropic is actively trying to bridge the mobile-desktop divide, but the front-end user interfaces just haven't fully caught up to the back-end logic yet. They have figured out how to securely route the commands and execute the local code. But seamlessly rendering locally generated HTML files back through a secure mobile tunnel in real time, that is a much harder networking problem.
So the plumbing is working perfectly, but they haven't finished painting the house.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. We are getting early access to the underlying protocol before the consumer-facing polish is applied. So Generating these HTML files locally and reading PDFs in a sandbox folder is undeniably powerful. But the reality of modern work is that we don't just live on our hard drives
Or
anymore.
absolutely not.
We live in the cloud. We live in SaaS apps. If the AI is truly going to be an asynchronous agent, a local folder just isn't enough. It needs a passport to access the rest of the internet.
Which is the hardest part to build.
And this introduces what I think is the most technically expansive, mind-bending part of Ms. Urich's breakdown: connectors and Zapier MCP.
This is the moment the scale of the conversation completely shifts, from local automation to global internet operation.
It really is. Brock starts by explaining the native connectors. Right out of the box, Claude directly integrates with about 38 different applications natively. He lists the heavy hitters: Gmail, bit.ly, Canva, GitHub, Slack.
The standard suite of enterprise and creative tools. If your workflow lives entirely within those 38 walled gardens, you have a very smooth, frictionless experience.
Right, but 38 apps is just a drop in the bucket compared to the thousands of niche-sized products people use every day. So what happens if you rely on a platform that isn't natively supported?
You have to find a workaround.
Brock introduces the workaround, and it sounds like something straight out of a cyberpunk novel. He calls it Zapier MCP.
MCP, the Model Context Protocol.
I need you to really dig into this because, according to Brock, Zapier MCP suddenly bridges Claude to over 8,000 different apps, unlocking more than 30,000 specific actions.
It's massive.
He walks through a very specific example to prove it. He uses a community platform called School. Claude has zero native integration with School. So Brock goes to Zapier MCP, creates a new server instance, and selects Claude Cowork as the designated client.
He is manually establishing the secure handshake between the AI's local environment and Zapier's cloud infrastructure.
Exactly. Once that handshake is established, he searches for the School app within Zapier's directory. He then handpicks the exact permissions and tools he wants his AI to possess. In this case, he selects Invite Members and Unlock Course for Members.
Highly specific actions.
Zapier processes this and spits out a single, unified URL. Brock copies that one URL, goes back to his Claude desktop app, pastes it into the Zapier connector field, and hits save. That is the entire process. Suddenly, his local desktop AI has the power to autonomously invite real human beings and unlock paid courses on a completely separate third-party cloud platform.
The simplicity of that user experience masks an absolutely staggering amount of back-end complexity.
It blew my mind. I was thinking about it like this. Native connectors, those 38 built-in apps, are like buying a house that comes with built-in appliances. The oven and the fridge are already wired in. They just work.
Right.
But Zapier MCP is like someone handing your AI a universal skeleton key that can unlock 8,000 different digital buildings across the globe. How does copying and pasting a single URL transform a sandbox desktop tool into a universal operator? What is the Model Context Protocol actually doing under the hood?
To really appreciate MCP, you have to understand the historical nightmare of API fragmentation.
API fragmentation. Give me the history lesson.
Okay, an API, an application programming interface, is simply how two pieces of software talk to each other. But historically, every company built their API differently. Salesforce formats data one way, Notion formats it another way, and a niche app like School formats it entirely differently.
They all have their own rule.
They use different authentication tokens, different endpoint structures, different JSON payloads.
It's like every app speaks a completely different language.
Exactly. So previously, if an AI company wanted their model to be able to interact with 8,000 different apps, they had to hire engineers to write 8,000 bespoke integration scripts.
That sounds impossible.
It was a massive, unscalable bottleneck. What the Model Context Protocol does is establish a universal standard for how AI models request and receive data from external tools. It is literally a universal translator.
So it forces everyone to speak the same language.
Rather than forcing the apps themselves to change, MCP standardizes the connection layer. When Brock pastes that URL into Claude, MCP takes the AI's natural language intent, like unlock the course for John, formats it into a standardized MCP request, and hands it to Zapier.
Oh, I see.
Zapier, which has spent the last decade building relationships with those 8,000 APIs, takes the standardized request and translates it into the specific bespoke code that the School platform actually requires.
So Zapier's just acting as the middleman routing the skeleton key.
Yes. And the implications for the everyday user are profound here. 5 years ago, if you wanted a system that could read a localized PDF, check a Google Calendar, and then automatically trigger an action in a bespoke educational platform, you had to hire a dedicated IT integration team.
You need a whole squad.
You needed developers to write custom Python scripts, manage OAuth tokens, maintain server infrastructure. Today, a non-technical user like Brock Miserich is achieving enterprise-grade automation by copying and pasting a single URL in 30 seconds.
It fundamentally removes the technical barrier to creating massively complex cross-platform systems. It is the ultimate leverage for a single operator.
Absolutely. It puts the power of a whole IT department into your text messages.
So if we pull back and look at the whole picture, we have local file access with secure sandboxes.
Right.
We have the ability to execute multiple agents in parallel. And we have an MCP bridge connecting our local hardware to 8,000 different cloud applications.
It's a very complete package.
It is incredibly obvious why the productivity world is hyper-fixated on Cowork Dispatch right now. But as with any massive leap forward in tech, it immediately sparked a philosophical war within the developer community.
Oh, inevitably.
And this brings us to the ultimate showdown that Brock highlights at the very end of his breakdown, the debate between Dispatch and OpenClaw.
This isn't just a debate about features either. It is a fundamental ideological divide regarding how AI should be deployed, controlled, and monetized.
Let's lay out the combatants here. Brock mentions that his comment section is just filled with people asking if Dispatch is the OpenClaw killer. So defining OpenClaw strictly based on how it's presented in the source text, it is a completely free open source AI agent that you install locally on your machine.
Right.
The biggest differentiator is that it is completely model agnostic. You are not forced to use Anthropic's models. You could plug in an open source model from Meta or route it through OpenAI's API, whatever you want.
Total freedom.
And instead of a proprietary desktop app, you control it via messaging platforms you already use, like sending it commands through WhatsApp, Telegram, or Discord.
OpenClaw really represents the hyper-flexible DIY open ecosystem approach. It's the Wild West of agentic workflows.
Exactly. Now contrast that with Dispatch. Dispatch costs $17 a month. It operates inside a walled garden, meaning it is locked exclusively to Claude models. Brock specifically names Claude 4.6 Sonnet and Claude 4.6 Opus as the engines running this.
You can't change the engine.
But in exchange for that restriction, you get absolute frictionless convenience.
Yeah.
Zero coding setup, no API keys to manage. It just works securely right out of the box.
It is the eternal tech battle. Ultimate DIY freedom versus managed ecosystem convenience. It's basically Linux versus Mac OS all over again.
But Brock highlights one highly specific technical difference between the two that I think completely changes how these tools function in the real world. It's the difference between cron jobs and scheduled tasks.
This gets right to the heart of what true autonomy actually means.
Let's break it down. OpenClaw utilizes cron jobs. For anyone unfamiliar, a cron job is a time-based job scheduler that runs invisibly in the background of an operating system.
It's always ticka.
Right. It allows the system to act proactively without human intervention. Brock gives this amazing example. You can set OpenClaw to constantly scan YouTube for competitor videos.
Just running 247?
Yeah. If a competitor drops a new video that suddenly spikes in views, OpenClaw doesn't wait for you to ask about it. It autonomously pings you on Telegram and says, hey, this competitor video is gaining traction. Here is a summary. Maybe you should make something similar. It is an active, always-on sentry.
It initiates the conversation based on external triggers, independent of your immediate command.
Dispatch, conversely, uses what are called scheduled tasks. Brock mentions he has a skill set up for a morning briefing. Every day at 7 a.m., Dispatch pulls his emails, checks his calendar, and sends him a neat summary on Slack.
Sounds great on paper.
But here is the massive, glaring limitation of Dispatch that Brock points out. For that 7 a.m. scheduled task to run, your physical computer and the Claude desktop app must be flipped open, awake, and active.
Right.
If your laptop is closed in your backpack while you were sleeping, that 7 a.m. task simply misfires. It does not execute at all.
The hardware must be actively engaged, even if you aren't.
And this is where I really started questioning the entire framing of this OpenClaw killer narrative in the comments.
Why is that?
Because if one tool, OpenClaw, requires coding knowledge, lets you swap out any LM brain you want, and operates totally autonomously in the background 247 via cron jobs, and the other tool, Dispatch, requires zero technical skills, locks you into one corporate model, and literally requires my laptop screen to be physically flipped open and awake like a 1990s screensaver just to send me a morning email.
Are they even competing?
Exactly. Are they even fighting in the same weight class?
How do you see the dynamic between them then?
It sounds to me like OpenClaw is this highly trained rogue operative. You give it a mission, drop it behind enemy lines, and it operates autonomously in the dark.
I like that.
Dispatch, on the other hand, is a very loyal, very capable, but ultimately sleepy golden retriever.
Rare.
It is an amazing companion, but if it is taking a nap because the laptop is closed, it is not going to fetch the newspaper at 7 a.m.
The golden retriever versus the rogue operative. I think that synthesizes the market reality perfectly. Because the truth is, Dispatch is not trying to kill open source tools like OpenClaw. It is trying to consumerize the concept of agentic workflows.
Consumerize it. Explain what you mean by that, especially regarding that requirement to keep the laptop awake. Why would Anthropic build a tool that seems so handicapped compared to the open source alternative?
Because it's not a handicap. It is a massive, highly deliberate guardrail. Think about the risk profile of what a cron job actually is.
The background task.
Right. Proactive, background AI, and intelligence that is authorized to act, send messages, and execute API calls while the human operator is completely asleep or disconnected, that carries an immense amount of enterprise and personal risk.
The hallucination problem again, coming back to bite us.
Exactly. We are talking about probabilistic systems here. Imagine a cron job goes slightly off the rails. It misinterprets a data feed at 3 a.m., decides that the optimal way to manage your storage is to mass delete a directory. Or it misreads a sarcastic tone in a Slack channel and sends a highly inappropriate automated reply to your entire engineering team while you are in deep REM sleep.
A hallucination cascade happening in the dark.
Yes. A true 24/7 autonomous agent can create a catastrophic mess before you even wake up to realize it happened. The OpenClaw crowd, the open source community, they are generally developers or highly technical power users.
They know what they're doing.
They understand those risks intimately. They write their own robust error handling scripts. They are willing to accept the wild, unpredictable freedom of the frontier because they know how to fix it when it breaks.
Right.
But Anthropic is selling a $17 a month subscription to everyday consumers, project managers, and small business owners.
People who just want the slideshow to work without blowing up their computer.
Exactly. Dispatch prioritizes non-technical safety and predictability over ultimate unchecked freedom. Forcing the laptop to be awake isn't just a technical limitation of the beta, it is a psychological and physical tether.
It keeps you in the loop.
It ensures that the user is at least theoretically on the clock and capable of intervening. If the golden retriever starts chewing the furniture, you are awake and in the room to stop it.
It's the difference between driving a manual transmission sports car with no traction control on a racetrack versus driving an automatic sedan with lane assist on the highway.
That's a great way to put it.
One gives you ultimate performance if you know exactly what you are doing, and the other guarantees you won't drift into the median on your way to work.
Precisely. And the vast majority of the market, they want the lane assist.
So if you are listening to this right now and mapping out your own AI strategy, this is the fundamental question you have to answer. Which camp do you fall into?
It's a big choice.
Do you want the raw, wild freedom of open source where you can choose your own models, write your own cron jobs, and accept the risks of true, unmonitored background autonomy? Or do you want the 30-second setup, the safe sandboxes, and the pre-packaged ecosystem where everything just works seamlessly, even if you have to leave your laptop screen glowing on the desk overnight to get your morning brief?
Both approaches have profound value, but they are built to serve entirely different masters. One serves the developer and the other serves the delegator.
That is a perfect distillation.
Yeah.
This has been a massive shift in how we conceptualize our daily workflows.
Truly.
To bring all of these threads together, Cowork Dispatch is fundamentally breaking the geographical chains of the desktop environment.
No more being chained to the desk.
For the cost of a few cups of coffee a month, non-technical users can now deploy asynchronous agents to trigger complex parallel tasks. Whether that's coding an HTML slideshow while you drive, having an agent draft contextual replies to 15 urgent emails simultaneously, scanning local PDFs to generate interactive expense reports, or synthesizing hyper-specific meeting briefs.
All of it.
All of this is executed via a simple text message from a phone, utilizing Zapier MCP to bridge local sandboxed files to over 8,000 global cloud applications.
It is bridging the physical security of the desktop with the ubiquitous convenience of mobile.
It really is. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on this entire concept of deployment versus operation.
What's that?
Well, for the last 40 years, we have spent our entire careers learning how to use computers in real time, We type on keyboards, we click mice, we watch the pixels on the screen react synchronously to our physical inputs.
It's very immediate.
It is a direct, localized dance between human and machine.
We have always been the operators of the machinery.
Right. But if tools like Dispatch normalize this new paradigm, if we get used to texting our computers to do hours of deep, complex, multi-step work while we are entirely disconnected from screens,
While we're out living our lives.
while we are at the gym or cooking dinner or sleeping, the fundamental nature of digital literacy is going to change. Will the defining skill of the next decade no longer be how fast we can type or how well we can navigate complex software menus?
Oh, that's interesting.
Will the defining skill actually become how effectively we can manage, instruct, and orchestrate our machines without ever actually looking at them?
The transition from the person who operates the tools to the person who manages the intelligence.
From an assistant chain to the desk to a digital ecosystem that starts working the exact moment we walk out the door. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep exploring these new protocols, keep testing where your own workflows bottlenecks, and keep pushing the boundaries of what these asynchronous agents can do for you. We'll catch you on the next one.